Welcome to Half Baked, the podcast where two Northerners argue a contentious issue slash non-issue. One of us is going to present a half-baked idea. The other will attempt to point out the shortcomings of his or her argument. And by the end of the show, we'll decide whether we're going to fully bake the argument or not.
What do you mean, or her? There's only us two. And we're
You never know.
How can it be her when we're both clearly male? Look at this. Like,
yeah.
I'm not wearing I might be wearing a dress. You can't see me from the waist down. But, I mean, he or she? No. Him or her? No. He. Definitely. Carry on.
I woke up this morning feeling gender fluid. So I'm just covering all bases.
You waking up with the fluids? That's not something we want to discuss right now. There
were gender fluids all over the bed when I woke up this morning. But Phil, what are you wearing?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Alistair. In fact, I thought you'd never ask. I'm wearing Azzaro today, which is my fragrance of choice. But what about you, Alistair? How are you? Where are you? And what are you wearing?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm wearing cotton. Half Baked this week is something that's been. By the way, Azzaro, was that a fragrance? A fragrance?
It is a fragrance. Yeah,
Is it by a fragrance maker, or is it by someone who used to make tractors?
No tractors involved, I think, but definitely a fragrance maker, and that was their name of their thing, the name of the company and the name of the fragrance, I believe. But there you go.
Oh. So like Durex.
Very similar.
In which case, I like it. I might buy some. I wouldn't buy a fragrance that was made by. Oh, I keep saying fragrance. I wouldn't buy a fragrance that was made by a non-fragrance manufacturer. Maybe something that we'll discuss in a half-baked show, but not this one, because this half-baked episode is all about my idea, which is about cars, and specifically that old cars are better than new cars. That's how I feel. Now, a little bit of context. I've recently bought an old car, which I love very much. Old, it's 17 years old, so it's pretty old. It's petrol, obviously, as in it's not electric. And I guess I could have bought a brand new car with my money, but I just felt, for a whole bunch of reasons that we're probably going to get into right now, that an old car was just the right thing to do. And I guess the context is, and one of the reasons why we're talking about this, Phil, because you've just bought a new car. So it's a quite nice time for us to be saying why old cars are better than new cars, or vice versa. That's true, isn't it?
It is true, and I bought multiple cars that are new recently. In fact, I was listing them out just last night, and it sounds a little bit over the top, but within the last month, I've bought two new cars. And about a year ago, we bought a new car. And then I actually figured out the last 7 cars we bought were new cars.
Right, perfect.
But we don't.
I've only ever bought one new car in my life, which I immediately wrote off. So that was an expensive way of buying a new car. Don't write your new cars off. So why do I think old cars are better than new cars? Because on paper, they shouldn't be. They don't work as well, and they don't have as many gadgets and all of that sort of stuff. But there is just something about my old car that is right for me and just makes me feel great every time I see it and look at it. And I've been trying to think about why that is. And I think it's down to a number of reasons. So I think the first reason is cars 17 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, didn't all look the same. My car looks different to any car that I could have bought with a similar amount of money, which would have been new, because they kind of all look the same because of various safety concerns about the shape of the bonnet and the size of your bumpers and all that sort of stuff. So it looks different. I love it because it looks different. I love it because it doesn't have any tech. It's kind of analog. It's an analog car. And this is a weird one for me because when I used to buy a car, it was like I'd have a checklist of things that I thought the car had to have. Right up at the top of that checklist was DAB radio, DAB radio, Bluetooth connectivity, USB slots all over the place, sat nav, all of that type of thing. My car's got none of that. It's got an AM radio, which sounds like you're listening to it through an electrical storm, and it's got a CD player which jumps. And I love the AM radio, and I love the CD player. And you know what? I never thought it, but I can completely live without sat nav and without DAB in my life. So I think there's some kind of dark art at work here, which is, you've got to have the latest tech because it's better and it'll make your life more convenient. And actually, I don't necessarily think that's the case at all. And then the final thing, and I suppose this is related to technical advances, is that I have to change the gears in my old car. In other words, it's got a stick shift, it's got a manual gearbox. And therefore, I think that I feel more connected to it because I'm responsible for how my car behaves. And you know what? I get that wrong sometimes. I get the gear changes wrong. But I like the idea that I get the gear changes wrong. I think it makes me feel like I've got agency. And
it doesn't make you just feel as though you're incompetent.
It does make me feel that I'm slightly incompetent, but I like...
Well, I wouldn't say slightly. I would go fully incompetent.
I think I'm at ease with my own feeling of self-incompetence. I don't think incompetence is a bad thing. It's just raw, frankly.
I think if you look in the dictionary, incompetence is defined as a bad thing. It probably just says a bad thing is the definition.
A bad thing. I'm gonna check it out. My dictionary is different to yours. My dictionary will probably say, you know what, it doesn't really matter. So when I think about it, they are the principal reasons why I'm just really pleased that I ended up buying an old car or the new car.
Yeah, and you know what, I can see. We're getting a bit of feedback or something's wrong with the audio. I can see in some situations, in a few situations actually, Alistair, that old cars are better than new cars. You mentioned the gadgets. Yeah, gadgets. New cars, some of the new cars we bought are just distracting. They're going to end up making us have a crash because the technology is just not well thought through. And that's one of the things that old cars have. The people who designed the cars thought, let's make it so the person isn't going to get distracted and crash and die or kill somebody. But the more recent car manufacturers seem to have lost that. It's probably because they've got a load of 20-year-olds designing the interface at the moment, which is why the Tesla has a joystick instead of a freaking steering wheel at some points. But it's new cars can be distracting. All the touchscreen controls, and don't give me a touchscreen control for altering the temperature. I just want to be able to alter the temperature with a knob. Same with altering the rear view mirrors. I don't want a touchscreen. I want a joystick. I want a knob to be able to do that, because you need to be able to do that quickly without taking your eyes off the road and trying to figure out what's going on. So they're terrible. They're terrible in that way, new cars. So I'm totally with you. And we've had 3 Audis. I love these Audis that we've got over time, but they'll gradually be getting worse and worse to the point where you end up like getting very upset while they're driving along because it's so terrible. But the car itself is magnificent. So that's the good thing about new cars. The way they drive, the handling, the suspension, acceleration, the fuel economy, the brakes, they don't rattle. There's all sorts of things about new cars that are really, really good. The other thing that's bad about new cars is the startup time. Sometimes we get into our Audi and I have to sit there for a minute while it figures out who I am and talks to the web. I don't know what it's doing, but what the hell? It might have a fast 0 to 60 time, but if it takes you 2 minutes to get out of the garage, then it's that's not a very fast car. And so I'm totally with you on several things. Also, I had one of my new cars I only bought 3 weeks ago reboot on me whilst driving along. That was kind of a bit hairy. The whole thing went off while I'm going 70 miles an hour. And except for the speedometer, the engine kept going, and the speedometer was still there, but everything else went off.
Wow.
That was, okay. And the good thing, modern cars are built in that way, where they have redundancy in the system, so and they monitor the processors monitor each other, so that if all right, this is fucked up. So in some ways, F word. Let's reboot is what it did. So yeah, it was a bit weird.
That is a bit weird. That's like, and you know what you're describing to me there is no longer a car; it's a computer with wheels.
Yeah,
and I
that's right.
want to drive.
And somewhere they're going wrong now, when they're not going wrong because they're so reliable. But I do think you've got your priorities all wrong with having DAB and sat-nav as your highest, the highest priority on choosing a new car, Alistair. That, the DAB radio has never been on any of my lists for anything. Even when putting a list together of radio technologies that exist, DAB radio didn't get onto that list. That's how little I think of DAB radio or digital radio. Yeah.
I think if you throw all of those things together, though, I'm happy with their older equivalents than I am with their new equivalents. And changing gears is in there, and knobs for your heater is in there, and the whole package. I know that if I'm going to buy an older car, then I don't have to deal with any of that stuff, and I won't really miss it. That's what I like. You know what? The other thing that occurred to me is, as I was driving along in a queue of traffic yesterday, or by a queue of traffic, all of the cars coming the other way were the same colour, pretty much. Analog colours. So grey, black, white. And I was just driving along and grey car, black car, black car, black car, white car, black car, all the way down. Now, my car's blue, and I think it's blue because it's older. I think you used to be able to get better looking cars which are differentiated by design and had different colours about them. And now everyone seems to have just kind of been forced into this like homogenated gloop of technology.
I don't think they're forced, Alistair. If you look at colours over time, and I've looked at this in the past, not recently, but like I think in the 70s or maybe the 80s in the UK, red cars were the most popular colour, and then somewhere in the 80s or 90s, white became the most popular colour, and then silver became the most popular. So you can look up these graphs and see that that's what people's tastes were. They were buying these cars and when you buy a new car, you can often choose the colour, Alistair. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept with the car that you're buying.
Not if you're buying a Tesla.
Or is that true?
Well, Tesla, the only Teslas I've seen are white, black, that horrendous, like, single colour blue that they do, and maybe red.
I think the blue is very similar to the blue of your top that you're wearing.
Well, it might be. Except this is good because I'm wearing it and I've chosen it. But the point being, I don't know that it plays to my sense of feeling that the decisions are being taken out of my hands. And you will have to end up doing this. You will have to use this piece of technology. You can only buy a car for this shape and colour and everything else. It has to be automatic. It's like, I don't want to, and I suppose this is me being deliberately contrary, but it's how I feel. I don't want to feel like I should be forced into taking those decisions. And I certainly don't want a car that's going to reboot on me at 70 miles an hour. I bet you were doing more than 70 miles an hour anyway, but you get my point.
Yeah, but when it comes to, you mentioned automatics and things like that. Actually, automatics are better than manual cars. Now, I get it. I've actually got a 15-year-old car, which is manual, and you know what? I love it. And I bought a new car to replace it, and the new car turned up, and I love the new car as well, but I can't bring myself to get rid of the 15-year-old car because it's such a magnificent machine, and it's partly because of the exhaust roars. It's partly because it's manual and you get engaged with it. Now, people get upset that you can no longer buy that car with a manual. Yeah, no, because automatic is better. People complain about that with the Ferrari 458. Oh, you can't get a manual for Ferrari 458. No, it's better with the automatic. It changes gear faster than you can blink your eyes, and it's just overall better. And it always know what the correct gear to be in. So just let it do its thing. And my son,
why is faster gear change better? Why is being in the right gear better? Why do these things actually count? It's like I like getting my gear changes wrong every so often. I kind of drop it. We've already
decided it's incompetence, and that's a bad thing, Alistair.
I like being given the opportunity to be incompetent. I think this is maybe where this is heading to. I just don't want. I would rather fail on my own terms than have a faster gear change on someone else's terms. A faster and correct gear change, I think.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm being assimilated into the Borg.
Yeah, the gear change by itself doesn't really matter, but it's smoother, and who cares about changing gears? I mean, it's not really adding to your life. Having said that, I do enjoy it on my old car, and I'm totally with you about old cars. If they're beautiful, then it's taking an old car out, or any car out. It doesn't matter. You're doing a public service when you take out a nice car for people to see. They don't have to go to a showroom. They don't have to go to some vintage museum. They don't have to go wherever. Just by driving along and then being able to see you, it brings smiles to a lot of people's faces. They like seeing these. They're works of art, some of these cars. And
I should be getting paid for driving my car down the road. People should throw
joy to the world. Not only are you enjoying missing the gear and making a stupid noise, making yourself look terrible by being incompetent, but you're also bringing joy to the world.
I am, and myself. So when I was thinking about this, I thought of the posters that I had on my. I'm kind of walking around these words carefully as if they were live mines. But the posters I had on my bedroom wall as a teen.
Well, you're not talking about the girl scratching her ass in the tennis.
Tennis, I am talking about her, but I'm also talking about the Lamborghini Countach that I had on my wall. I made 2 model Lamborghini Countach, never sounds right. Airfix models. I made 1 black one with a grey interior, and I made 1 red one with a cream interior. I just couldn't stop making these things when I was growing. I love them. So what that makes me feel is if I had the money to spend on it. Now I know the Lamborghini Countach is, on the face of it, hopeless. It's so bad, it's kind of undrivable, isn't it? And it's not fast. I was going to
say, your Airfix model, the handling of it was probably the same as the real thing.
It probably was.
Just as terrible to drive.
Yeah, and it was probably, it probably fell apart with the same gusto as a real one as well. But if I had that sort of money, which would probably be, for the sake of argument, $200,000, I would buy a Lamborghini Countach, safe in the knowledge it would be kind of hopeless, rather than its Porsche or whatever equivalent, because it's the 8-year-old boy in me. It's that thing which... It's not a literal 8-year-old boy in me, Phil.
You saw where I was going with that.
It's that kind of that. Is it soul? Is it? It's some kind of unnameable emotional frisson.
It's nostalgia, right? You loved that car when you were younger, and now you're being nostalgic about that. I can now afford that car, even though maybe you can't, and why not have it? And I can see that. You put it in as a goal in life to maybe get that car, and I can see that thing. But it would be an absolutely terrible choice. Now, I should point out I've never actually driven a Countach or sat in one, and maybe only seen one once or twice. But what I've from the reviews of people who have driven these cars, what it tells me is they're terrible, and there's far superior, just as nice looking, if not better looking, cars and options that you could choose, which would be either cheaper or the same price, and would be a much better decision.
I just don't think superior is superior. I think sometimes inferior is superior because it has that other je ne sais quoi about it. I've only seen like a Countach on a couple of occasions, and on both occasions, I just stopped in my tracks, as if like a bomb had just gone off or something. It was just like a visceral.
That could have been the engine exploding.
Emotional moment. I know it's a pretty extreme example of an old car, but the point being, there is something about me never wanting to part with that sort of money for a brand new car. I might as well just, I don't know, conform and be like everyone else.
I'm with you a bit about the nostalgia. Like, years ago, back in the mid-90s, I had a TVR Chimera, and I loved it. It was a beautiful looking car. The interior was exquisite. And it made great grunt. A little bit too noisy, actually. I remember once going down the motorway in England, and for our American viewers, that's the same as highway. And
well, it's not, is it? Because motorway is what Americans say as well. So they
use freeway and highway. I don't think they use motorway.
My point being, you said motorway, not motorway.
All right, there you go. Pass me the butter. What am I going with? Oh yeah, so I was going down the motorway. I went to turn down the radio, the music that was on the TVR, and actually the radio wasn't on, and it was the noise of the engine and the exhaust that was getting to me that I needed to turn down. But unfortunately, you couldn't do that. But it was
you had your exhaust tuned into classic FM.
That's right, but it is sonorous, so it should be on a classic, like a symphony. But I mean, I've thought about buying one of those cars and bringing it over here. Now, I've totally forgotten the fact that it used to be in the shop, as they would say here, getting work done to it because it was always breaking down. It was a magnificent car, and but it was there was often something wrong with it. And I thought about buying one and bringing it over here now that. After a car's 25 years old, you can import it into the US and it doesn't have to pass all the regulations. So I thought about bringing one, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do with it when it goes wrong, though? Because that would be a problem. But yeah, nostalgia for a car, for a time gone past where it was a great car.
Okay. Well, I'm feeling pretty good about my half-baked idea here. I'm not... the whole, I think I'm talking myself further and further into it. The whole kind of, if just because it feels superior, is it actually superior thing? I don't buy that. I don't buy the colours thing. I don't buy the technology thing. I'm with Marshall McLuhan on this. Marshall McLuhan, albeit slightly extreme.
Is he a car journalist on Top Gear?
No, you're thinking of Jeremy Renner. No, Marshall McLuhan was he was an American philosopher, and he said a whole bunch of things. And one of the things he said is that every convenience is an amputation. And that's how I feel. Every convenience, and I think what he meant by that is that anything that kind of is meant to make life easier for us is just reducing the amount of things that we actually need to do. So we might as well just lob off that arm, leg, penis. Because
I don't know. You got the penis. That's okay. Carry on.
Because we have things in life that can do just as good jobs, if not better, than our own arms. Legs.
So 7-Eleven that opens around the corner is leads to amputating some part of your body.
Yeah, usually my cock. That's just
It's
how
gone
I
very
go.
R-rated, this episode, for some reason.
Uh, um,
The
so
fluid.
yeah, but it's
30-year-old
true,
boys,
isn't it?
and now it's your penis mentioned multiple times. I don't think I've
Yeah.
been this much exposure in decades.
And how's that make you feel?
Let's move on. So, right. Well, let's talk about an old car. This old car that I was going to get rid of now that I've got a new car was an Aston Martin Vantage, and it's 15 years old. It's
Yep.
manual. But it rattles. It rattles, and
Yep.
it doesn't have Bluetooth. So I have to have, which isn't a massive inconvenience actually, because I knew that, and I knew that when I bought it. And I've had it for 12 years, and it's a great car. I love it. I've driven it a lot. It's got 97,000 miles on the clock. I did think I might just keep it. I did think about giving it to my son for his as his first car. Imagine that, your first car being an Aston Martin. I think that'd be pretty cool. But the problem is it's manual, and kids. My impression is kids don't want to learn to. Most kids don't want to learn to drive these days, and they certainly don't want to have the hassle of driving a manual, because there's just another thing to worry about when they're trying not to kill people with this hunk of metal. So, and it did also occur to me that that car, you have to change the gearbox every 40,000 miles ish, and I changed it about 70,000 miles ago. So I've been treating it nicely, and it's been going on. But as soon as I put a 17-year-old in that car, that's going to mean I have to replace the gearbox probably. Which
Yeah, probably within 24 hours.
that's right.
He'll have, like, in his confusion about what that stick thing is, he'll have probably like pulled it straight out from its bearings.
But it's
Well,
beautiful object. You are doing a public service by driving that car around, and it's magnificent, and it roars. I love it.
Why are rattles bad?
It's just
Because my car's more than rattles.
it's supposed to be some kind of high end car. So that I want to keep that image going. So when people get in it and it starts rattling, it just takes away from the image. I don't want that.
But people will think, oh yeah, you know what? That's quite nice. It's rattling away. That's because it's an older car, and the owner of the car chooses to put up with those rattles because he realizes, or she, that they are getting their soul stroked by every time they get in it, and rattles don't really matter.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. But yeah, I can. Okay.
Well, look, time's just about up. The conclusion I'm coming to is that this particular half-baked idea, I'm going to fully bake it. And what I mean by that is that I'm dedicated to old cars. I'm never buying a new car. They don't make financial sense. I'm not bothered about the technology. I am completely incompetent, and I quite like the fact that my car is as well. Feels like we can drive down the road incompetently together without any judgment on each other. So I value your input, Phil, and yeah, that's kind of where I am. Does that sound like a reasonable place to end?
I think so.
Great. Okay. Well, it behooves me to say to everyone, thank you for listening, and we will be here in another week's time with another half-baked idea. Thank you, Phil, and goodbye.
Thank you, Alistair. Goodbye.